Alien girl touches human's collarbone to test heat, but human hears her heart race for him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Ethan Hale stood inside the temperature lab, the hum of cooling vents brushing against his skin like a slow-moving breeze. The overhead lights flickered in soft blue pulses, each one reflecting off the frost gathering along the steel railings. He exhaled, watching his breath bloom into a cloud that vanished as quickly as it formed. The cold didn't bother him much. He'd grown used to it during nights spent fixing machinery in underheated hangars back on Earth. But nothing prepared him for the way Lyria Sale stepped through the pressure door. Her skin carried that signature blue-silver glow, dim at the edges like moonlight on water, brighter near her cheeks, as if lit from within. The room's scanners reacted instantly, their readings shifting in quiet electronic murmurs as she approached. Human heat disperses differently, she said, her voice soft but edged with curiosity. Our instruments detect anomalies near the collarbone. I need a physical reference point. Ethan nodded, steady, even though the cold nipped along his shoulders, and the thin fabric of his standard-issue thermal shirt didn't do much to hide how exposed his collar area was. Whatever you need, he said. She stepped closer. He heard the gentle tap of her boots on the frosted floor, each step slower than the last, as if she were measuring not just distance but intention. When she finally reached him, she lifted her hand, slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wild bird they didn't want to startle. Her fingertips hovered over his collarbone before making contact. A soft, feather-light touch. Cool at first, then warmer, as if her skin adjusted second by second. Ethan didn't move. The contact wasn't intimate by human standards, but the air shifted around them in a way he couldn't name. Lyria's eyes widened slightly, pupils narrowing, not in fear, but in something closer to surprise. A quiet chirp sounded from the scanner behind her, but she didn't turn. Instead, her breath caught. Just once. Just enough to notice. Ethan expected her to pull away, to reset the scan, to say something technical. Instead, he heard it. Soft, rhythmic, unmistakably alive. Her heartbeat. Faster than before. Not frantic. Not scared. Just different. Lyria blinked, her fingertips pressing just a fraction firmer against his skin, as if confirming something only she could feel. Then her voice came out low, almost steady. This is unusual. Ethan tilted his head, not breaking the quiet around them. Your scanners aren't malfunctioning, he said gently. That's you, isn't it? Lyria didn't answer. She simply let her hand remain there, a still point in the cold, while the pulse beneath her own ribs fluttered against the silence, giving her away far more than her words ever could. For a long moment, Ethan stood completely still, letting the cool press of Lyria's fingers settle against his collarbone, while the faint rhythm beneath her chest struggled to arrange itself into something steady. The laboratory lights dimmed briefly as the temperature regulator cycled, sending a soft ripple of cold air across the room. It brushed her silver-blue skin in a way that made the faint luminescence along her jaw brighten, almost like a quiet confession she had not intended to give. Lyria finally withdrew her hand, not abruptly, but slowly, as if measuring the exact second when contact shifted from scientific necessity to something she did not fully understand. She stepped back only a few inches, her posture still aligned with his, the way someone stands when they are not quite ready to leave the gravity of another person. The reading was inconclusive, she said, but her voice carried a softness that did not match the words. Your heat signature behaves unpredictably. Ethan breathed out a short laugh that misted in the chilled air. I have been told that before. Usually when I am late fixing a coolant pump. Lyria's gaze flicked up, her expression caught somewhere between study and instinct. Her species rarely displayed emotion openly, yet there was a slight parting of her lips, just enough to reveal that she was still regulating her breathing. Human physiology is inefficient, she said, but the remark sounded more like she was trying to steady herself with familiar logic. You generate more warmth than expected at your core. Maybe, Ethan replied. Or maybe you are just not used to standing this close to someone who is not wearing a thermal suit. The glow along her cheeks brightened again. Not a blush by human standards, but the azuri equivalent, delicate and shimmering under the pale light. She turned toward the console, her movements controlled, although her hands hesitated for a fraction of a second before touching the controls. Ethan watched her shoulders rise with a slow inhale. Your heartbeat elevated as well, he said quietly. She froze, her fingers suspended above the holographic panel. Humans should not rely on assumptions taken from minimal data. It was loud enough to hear over the scanner. He answered, gentle, not pressing, just noticing. Lyria lowered her hands, clasping them in front of her in a way that looked almost like she was grounding herself. Our bodies respond to temperature variations differently, she said. A change in rhythm is expected when encountering unexpected heat gradients. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Was it the heat, Lyria? Or was it something else? She exhaled, a sound as soft as the frost melting along the vent above her. Her eyes met his briefly before drifting away, unable to hold the contact for more than a heartbeat. Human proximity is unfamiliar, she admitted. Your species projects warmth even when your intentions are neutral. It disrupts our internal patterns. Ethan stepped no closer, but the space between them felt thinner. If it makes you uncomfortable, you can adjust the distance, he said. She hesitated again. For someone trained in controlled environments, hesitation meant more than any scanner ever could. It does not make me uncomfortable, she said. It only makes me aware. The lights overhead brightened softly as the system recalibrated, casting a silver sheen across her skin. Her eyes returned to his, steady this time, clear despite the subtle tremor she had tried so carefully to hide. We should continue the analysis, she said, but her voice carried a different rhythm now, quieter, almost warm. Ethan nodded, though neither of them moved immediately. The cold in the room remained the same, but something in the air between them had shifted, subtle and unmistakable, like the moment a frost line cracks and the first drop of thawed water begins to fall. The chill inside the laboratory deepened as the regulators shifted into a new cycle, releasing a low hiss that drifted across the metal floor. Ethan felt the temperature dip, but he barely noticed it now. What caught his attention was the slight rise of Lyria's shoulders as the colder air wrapped around her, followed by the faint ripple of light traveling along her skin like a quiet pulse. She lifted a hand to the console again, but paused halfway, her fingers suspended as if listening to something inside herself. The sensors will stabilize shortly, she said, though her voice had lost the precise certainty she always carried. Your proximity altered the data. I will need to recalibrate manually. Ethan stepped back a single pace, offering her space without breaking the fragile thread of attention stretched between them. Take whatever time you need, he said. I am not going anywhere. Her eyes flicked to him, a quick, instinctive glance, almost like she was confirming that he meant it. He did. Lyria returned her focus to the console, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, yet every so often her fingers hesitated, as if her mind kept circling back to something far less technical. The dim lights reflected in the curve of her cheek, making the soft glow beneath her skin shimmer with every breath. Ethan watched the way she worked, calm and precise, but also subtly distracted. When she finally spoke again, it was quieter. Your heartbeat remained steady, she said, even when the temperature dropped. Years of broken heaters back on Earth, he replied. You learned to adapt. She shook her head slightly. No, adaptation takes time. Your response was immediate. She turned toward him fully now, her eyes tracing the faint rise and fall of his chest beneath the fabric of his shirt. Humans maintain warmth even without external catalysts. It is unusual. Ethan smiled gently. And I thought you said my physiology was inefficient. The glow along her cheekbones brightened, a telltale azuri reaction she could not hide. It is still inefficient, she insisted, though the conviction had softened. But adaptable. Dynamic. There is a difference. A soft alert buzzed from the console, signaling that the system was ready for the next phase. Lyria inhaled, grounding herself. I will need to run another scan, she said. But this time, physical contact is not necessary. Ethan nodded, though part of him noticed the way her fingers subtly flexed as if they remembered the warmth they had touched earlier. She adjusted the scanner, aligning it toward him, yet her gaze lingered a moment too long near his collar line, the place her hand had rested before. The machine began to hum, casting a faint beam of light that washed across his skin in smooth, slow waves. Lyria watched the readings, but Ethan could sense she was equally aware of the silence between them. The steady hum of the scanner filled the room, but underneath it, he heard the soft rhythm of her breath, matching and mismatching its own pattern as though caught between instinct and analysis. When the scan concluded, she reviewed the results with a concentrated stare, her brow drawing together slightly. "The readings have changed again," she murmured. "But the external conditions are the same. The only variable is," she looked up at him, her voice almost a whisper. "You." Ethan did not move. "Is that a problem?" She held his gaze, steady this time, no hesitation, no retreat. "I do not know," she said. "But I am aware of it now. And awareness changes everything." The laboratory felt different now, as if the walls themselves had taken a quiet breath and were waiting to see what happened next. Lyria stood near the console, her silver-blue glow softened by the low ambient lights as she reviewed the latest readings. The holographic lines rose and dipped across the screen, but her eyes kept drifting away from the data and back toward Ethan, as if drawn by a pull she had not yet learned how to hide. Ethan rested one hand on the edge of the table, not leaning, just steady, grounding himself in the gentle hum of the machinery. The cold air no longer bit at his skin. Instead, he felt a calm warmth settling through him, the kind that comes when silence is shared rather than forced. "The energy pattern is irregular," Lyria said, though the slight tremor in her voice betrayed that her attention was not fully on the numbers. "There is something else influencing the measurement." Ethan waited, allowing the space between them to remain open. "You think it is emotional interference," he said softly. Lyria hesitated, her eyes lowering to the soft glow along her hands. "Our kind does not display emotional variance in detectable ways," she replied. "At least, not in ways we acknowledge openly." She exhaled, a slow, controlled breath. "But the baseline does not lie. Something changed." Ethan stepped closer, not enough to close the distance completely, but enough that she noticed. Her shoulders tensed at first, then eased, the glow on her skin shifting like moonlight settling over calm water. "You reacted to contact," he said, gentle. "That is not a failure of the scan. That is a natural response." Lyria's eyes met his, steady and searching. Natural responses are predictable, but this was not. It did not feel organized. Ethan smiled, just a little. Feelings rarely are. She looked away quickly, as if the word itself unsettled her. "I am trained to manage instinctual impulses," she said. "I should not experience fluctuations simply because a human stands within a few feet." "Then maybe it is not just because I am human," Ethan replied. "Maybe it is because it is me." The glow along her cheekbones brightened, a soft shimmer that she could not will away. She clasped her hands together, not tightly, just gently enough to steady the rhythm of her breathing. "When I touched your collarbone," she said, "I expected one type of data. Instead, my pulse accelerated without conscious instruction." She paused, recalling the moment in crisp detail. "I could feel the warmth beneath your skin. Your heartbeat." The contrast was disorienting. Ethan nodded. "It affected you." "Yes," she admitted, the word barely audible but honest. "And I do not know what to call that." The temperature regulators clicked softly, releasing a mild wave of warmth through the room. It brushed along the floor, lifting a small veil of frost and letting it fall again like drifting powder. Lyria closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth settle into her skin, smoothing out the last of the tremor in her voice. When she opened them, her gaze was clearer. "I propose a controlled repetition," she said. "Not to recreate the emotional response, but to understand why it occurred in the first place." Ethan raised an eyebrow gently. "You want to try again?" "For scientific purposes," she clarified quickly, though the glow in her cheeks contradicted the purely clinical tone. "If you are comfortable with that." Ethan took one slow step forward, bridging the remaining distance until he stood within her reach, not touching, just present. "I am comfortable," he said, "but only if you are." Lyria lifted her hand, stopping just short of his skin. Her Fingers hovered inches from his collarbone, glowing faintly in the soft blue light. "I am aware," she whispered, the closest she had ever come to saying she was ready. And the room held its breath, waiting for her hand to move. For a long heartbeat, Lyria's hand remained suspended in the cold air between them, her fingertips glowing faintly as the laboratory lights shifted into their next cycle. The soft hum of the temperature regulators filled the room with a calm mechanical pulse, steady and sure, nothing like the quiet tension building in the space between her hand and Ethan's skin. She drew in a measured breath, the kind she used when aligning delicate instruments, yet her fingers trembled almost imperceptibly. Ethan noticed, but he did not reach for her, did not close the distance on her behalf. He simply waited, steady as anchored metal, letting her choose the moment. Slowly, her hand lowered until her fingertips brushed his collarbone once more. The contact was light, no more pressure than a falling snowflake. But the warmth that spread beneath her touch was unmistakable. It radiated outward, gentle and human, and completely outside her controlled expectations. Lyria's pupils narrowed in concentration. "Your temperature flux is stable," she said, though her voice carried a softness that did not match the clinical observation. "No irregular spike." Ethan nodded slightly. "And your pulse?" She hesitated. The glow under her skin brightened again, subtle but undeniable. Rising, her hand lingered against his skin a little longer, long enough that she finally withdrew it with a slow, careful motion that suggested she was not entirely ready to break contact. She turned toward the console again, though her movements were slower now, as if her body was adjusting to a sensation it had not fully processed. "This cannot be explained by environmental factors alone," she murmured while reviewing the holographic display. "There must be an interaction variable that was overlooked." Ethan stepped to her side, not close enough to touch, but close enough to see the shifting glow on her skin as she worked. "Maybe the variable is not something you can measure with equipment," he said. "Maybe it is something you feel." Lyria paused, her hand suspended above the console. "Feelings," she repeated quietly, as if the word itself were foreign. "That concept lacks measurable parameters." He smiled gently. "Some things do not need parameters to be real." She looked at him then, her eyes bright beneath the cool lighting, the purple hues in her irises reflecting the soft flicker of the display. "Your species relies heavily on instinct," she said. "But instinct can lead to inaccurate conclusions." "Or accurate ones," Ethan replied. Lyria considered that, her expression shifting with a complexity she rarely showed. She clasped her hands together lightly, the gesture almost human in its softness. "I do not wish to misinterpret this," she admitted. "If my reaction is purely biological, then it is a temporary fluctuation. But if it is not," she did not finish the sentence. The silence filled in the rest. Ethan waited, letting her shape the next thought. "When I touched your collarbone," she said slowly, "the warmth was not what I expected. It was grounding." Ethan's voice softened. "Grounding can be a sign of trust." Lyria blinked once, a gesture of quiet contemplation. "Trust," she echoed. "I understand the definition, but I did not expect to apply it here." Her eyes lifted to meet his again. "Your presence alters my physiological responses, not in a destabilizing way, in a way that feels," she paused, searching for the correct word, "calibrated." Ethan let the words settle between them, gentle and deliberate. "Then maybe this is not interference," he said. "Maybe this is alignment." The hum of the laboratory deepened slightly as the regulators shifted again, a warm wave passing through the room. Lyria's glow responded instinctively, softening along her skin. She did not step back this time. She simply stood beside him, quiet and aware, as if finally recognizing that the variable she had been trying so hard to isolate was no longer something she needed to resist. The laboratory settled into a steady hush, the kind of quiet that made every small sound feel amplified, from the soft click of the consoles recalibrating to the faint shift of air around the temperature vents. Lyria stood beside Ethan, her posture composed but her glow subtly unsteady, like a pulse of light searching for equilibrium. She kept her gaze on the holographic readings, yet her attention flickered toward him in small, involuntary glances. "If the variable is alignment," she said carefully, "then the next step is to determine whether it is consistent or situational." Ethan nodded. "Meaning you want to know if it only happens during contact?" She hesitated. Or if it happens simply because you are near. The admission lingered in the room longer than she meant it to, settling into the cool air like a truth that did not wish to remain hidden. Lyria straightened, as if trying to recover her usual analytical distance. We should test for proximity-based interference, she said. A gradient approach. I will adjust the distance in small increments. Ethan remained steady where he stood. Tell me where you want me. The phrase made her glow brighten again, though she quickly turned to the console to mask it. Stand exactly where you are, she instructed, her voice calm again but softened at the edges. She activated a sequence that projected a faint ring of light around him, marking his position. Then she stepped backward, one measured pace at a time. At 6 feet, she paused. The scanner hummed, the readings stable. No change, she said. She stepped closer, reducing the distance to 4 feet. The readings shifted slightly, a gentle rise in an energy waveform she had never associated with human presence before. Her breath caught. There is a fluctuation. Ethan smiled lightly. Good or bad? Lyria did not answer immediately. She stepped closer again, now only 2 feet away, close enough that he could see the way her eyes reflected the ambient blue light. The console emitted a soft tone as the waveform rose again. Not chaotic, not unstable, simply elevated. It increases when you are nearer, she said, but not in a disruptive way. It is harmonious. She seemed almost startled by her own description. Ethan watched her steady herself with a slow breath. Lyria, he said gently, does this reaction frighten you? She shook her head immediately, the glow on her skin flickering in a calmer rhythm. No, it does not frighten me. It simply challenges what I thought I understood. She lifted her hand slightly, not to touch him, but to feel the warmth radiating from him without contact. Her fingers hovered a few inches from his collarbone again, and the scanner emitted another soft rise in tone. There, she whispered. It responds even without touch. Ethan's voice softened. So do you? Lyria lowered her hand slowly, her gaze lingering on the space between them. This is what confuses me, she admitted. Alignment should be a mechanical process. Yet this feels intentional. Maybe it is, Ethan said. Maybe alignment is not. Just something that happens. Maybe it is something we choose. Lyria studied him, her eyes steady now, the glow along her cheekbones warm and even. If that is true, she said quietly, then I am choosing to remain in the range of interference. The air between them seemed to hold its breath. She stepped closer by a fraction of an inch, crossing an invisible threshold where her glow softened into a calm, steady rhythm. And the readings, she added, almost in a whisper, have never been more stable. The laboratory lights shifted into a softer hue as the next temperature cycle began, casting long, calm reflections across the polished floor. The air held a gentle warmth now, just enough to soften the frost along the railings. Lyria remained standing close to Ethan, her glow steady for the first time since they began the experiment. It flowed along her skin like a quiet affirmation, a rhythm that seemed to match the slow rise and fall of her breath. She reviewed the readings again, but her attention drifted to him more openly now, without the sharp hesitation she carried earlier. The alignment pattern has stabilized, she said, though her voice carried more wonder than analysis. There is no distortion, no irregularity. It is as if the system recognizes your presence. Ethan watched her carefully. And what about you? Lyria paused, her hands lowering from the console. I am aware, she said softly, but not unsettled. She stepped slightly closer, closing the last foot of distance. The air between them shifted, warm meeting cool in a delicate balance. Your proximity produces a consistent energy pattern, she continued, and my body responds in a way that is not chaotic. It is coherent. Ethan nodded slowly. Coherent sounds good. It is unusual, she corrected gently, but not negative. A soft chime echoed from the console, indicating the completion of another automated scan. Lyria did not turn to look at it. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if sensing something more subtle in the space around them. Do you feel it? She asked. Ethan met her gaze. Feel what? Lyria lifted her hand and held it in the space between them, not touching him, just hovering near the warmth radiating from his chest. A shift, she said quietly, like a calibration aligning two different frequencies. She hesitated, her voice softening. It feels intentional. Ethan breathed. In, slow and steady. Maybe that is because we are both allowing it. Her glow brightened, not sharply, but like a soft ripple passing beneath the surface of a lake. Allowing, she repeated, tasting the word as if it were new. We do not have a direct translation for that concept. It implies openness. Choice. Yes, Ethan said gently. Choice. Lyria looked down at her own hand, still suspended in the warm space between them. When I first touched your collarbone, she said, I reacted without meaning to. I assumed it was an error. But now, she lifted her eyes, luminous and steady. Now the reaction feels deliberate, even without contact. Ethan remained still, letting her shape the moment. She stepped just half an inch closer, enough that the warmth touched her fingertips again. The console behind her responded instantly, emitting a soft, rising tone. Lyria's breath faltered in the quiet. There, she whispered. The alignment strengthens when I choose to move closer. Ethan's voice lowered. Does that bother you? She shook her head slowly. No. It clarifies something I did not understand. Her expression softened in a way he had not seen before, the kind of calm that only comes after acknowledging something true. I thought the reaction meant my systems were destabilizing, she said. But now I see that it only occurs when I direct my attention toward you. Ethan's heartbeat steadied, warm and real in the quiet room. Then what does that tell you? Lyria's glow deepened gently along her skin, as if answering for her. It tells me, she said softly, that this is not interference. She let her hand lower a fraction more into his warmth, and the scanner responded with its calmest reading yet. It is connection. The warmth radiating between them held steady, a quiet equilibrium that neither of them rushed to break. The laboratory lights dimmed into their late-cycle glow, casting soft reflections across the frost-lined floor. Lyria's hand remained suspended near Ethan's chest, not touching, yet close enough that the air between her fingertips and his skin felt charged with a calm, deliberate awareness. She studied the new readings as they appeared across the holographic display, but her eyes returned to him with increasing frequency, drawn as much by instinct as by curiosity. Connection, she said again, almost to herself. It suggests mutual influence, not a one-directional response. Ethan nodded, his voice low and steady. That sounds right. Lyria stepped back a single pace, observing how the scanner reacted. The soft hum dipped slightly, but the waveform remained elevated, holding its smooth arc. Interesting, she murmured. Distance decreases the intensity, but it does not eliminate it entirely. Ethan watched her expression shift, thoughtful and focused. So it is not just proximity. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the faint blue light. No, it appears to be attention-based as well. The alignment persists even when physical space is increased, as long as my focus remains directed toward you. A quiet acknowledgement warmed Ethan's features. And where is your focus now? The glow along her cheekbones brightened again in a soft, involuntary ripple. Instead of turning away, she held his gaze. On you, she said simply. The scanner responded with a gentle rise in tone, as if confirming her words. She approached him again, slow and deliberate, closing the distance in small, careful increments. When she reached her earlier position, just within the range of his warmth, her glow steadied once more. I would like to understand the source of this stability, she said. It is unique. Ethan tilted his head. Unique how? Lyria considered her answer. When I am near other individuals, even those of my species, my internal readings remain neutral, structured, predictable. But near you. She gestured toward the console as it displayed a smooth, rhythmic waveform. The pattern becomes balanced in a way I have not observed before. It feels centered. Ethan took a quiet breath. And how does it feel to you? Not the data. You. Lyria's fingers curled slightly as she processed the question. It feels like a settling, she said softly, as if something within me that was not aligned has found its counterpart. The admission deepened the stillness between them. She lifted her hand again, this time purposely, and let it hover just at the edge of his warmth. The scanner's tone softened into its calmest register. There is something else, she said. Something I have not shared. Ethan remained patient. Tell me. Lyria glanced at the readings once more before facing him fully. Our species does not form connections easily. We communicate through energy resonance, shared frequencies. When two individuals align, even briefly, it indicates compatibility of instinct. Ethan's heartbeat echoed quietly in the space between them. And you think that is what this is? Lyria lowered her hand just a little further, letting the warmth brush her fingertips. I think my body recognized the alignment long before my mind understood it. Ethan's expression softened. And now that your mind understands? She held his gaze, steady and calm, her glow warm and even. Now, she said, I am no longer resisting it. The scanner hummed, smooth and harmonious, mirroring the shift she had finally allowed within herself. And for the first time that evening, Lyria did not look at the data. She looked only at him. The laboratory settled into its quiet night cycle, the lights dimming into a soft blue haze that reflected gently along the metal surfaces. The temperature regulators released one final pulse of warm air, brushing past Ethan and Lyria like a calm exhale from the building itself. The scanner behind them continued its steady hum, the waveforms smooth and even, as if it had finally found the rhythm it had been seeking all along. Lyria remained standing close to Ethan, her glow steady and warm, no longer flickering with uncertainty. She looked at the holographic display briefly, then back at him, a subtle but unmistakable shift in her focus. The readings have stabilized completely, she said, her voice quiet but sure. There is no remaining fluctuation, no irregularity. The system has adapted. Ethan nodded gently. And you? Lyria held his gaze, unguarded in a way she had not allowed before. I have adapted as well. She stepped closer by a deliberate fraction, allowing the warmth radiating from him to reach her fully. The glow beneath her skin deepened, soft and even, settling into a calm she had not experienced at any point during their tests. This alignment, she continued, is not mechanical. It is relational. It responds to intention, to presence. Ethan felt the truth of her words settle into the air between them. And your intention now? He asked softly. Lyria inhaled slowly, letting her breath steady along the same quiet rhythm as the scanner. My intention is to remain within this connection, she said. Not because of the data, but because of the clarity it brings. She lifted her hand again, slowly, purposefully, and allowed her fingertips to hover near his collarbone. Not touching this time. Not testing. Simply acknowledging the space where everything had shifted. The scanner emitted a soft tone, the smoothest it had produced all evening. Lyria watched the light move across her hand, then returned her gaze to Ethan with a calm certainty. When I first touched you, I believed the reaction was an error, she said. But now I see it was a recognition. Ethan's voice softened. Recognition of what? She took another step closer, the glow along her skin shimmering like distant starlight settling into a steady pulse. Recognition of alignment, she said. Not between systems. Between us. The laboratory fell completely silent except for the gentle hum of the scanner. No alarms. No fluctuations. Only a quiet steadiness that seemed to mirror her resolve. Lyria lowered her hand until it hovered once more at the edge of his warmth, her voice barely above a whisper. This connection does not disrupt me, she said. It centers me. Her eyes lifted to meet his fully, without hesitation, without retreat. And for the first time, she added, I do not wish to analyze it. I only wish to acknowledge it. Ethan stood still, letting the weight of her words settle between them like a final calibration clicking into place. Lyria allowed her hand to fall gently to her side, but she remained close, her glow warm, her breathing steady, her presence open in a way that spoke louder than any measurement. The scanner released one final chime, soft and harmonious, as if marking the moment. And in the quiet, with nothing left to test and nothing left to interpret, Lyria simply looked at Ethan, her voice calm and certain as she spoke the truth she had finally allowed herself to understand. This, she said, is alignment.